Hello and welcome to World Have Your Say. Well, there's only one thing that you want to talk about today. It's the G20. As we've been seeing on BBC World News, all the main players are here in London for tomorrow's summit. And while the politicians try and find a way to sort out the world's economy, on today's programme, you're going to be doing the same. We've people from China, India, Brazil and South Africa to kick off your discussion. And wherever you are in the world, you're very welcome to join our conversation. Here's how. Call us on country code 44 2070 83 72 72. You can text us from your mobile phone on country code 44 7786 20 60 80, or you can email us at worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com or add a comment on the blog at worldhaveyoursay.com. Well, earlier we heard from Gordon Brown and Barack Obama, and in a moment it'll be the turn of Angela Merkel and Nicolas Sarkozy. You can see there the press conference stage. We're expecting them any moment, and as soon as they walk on, we'll hear a little bit of what they've got to say. But in the meantime, let me introduce you to some of our guests on today's World Have Your Say. We've got guests here in the studio. We'll speak to them in a moment. But first, let's go to our guests here on the big screen for World Have Your Say. We have Tony Avigan from the Economic Policy Institute in Washington. And first, Professor Vijay Joshi. He's from St John's College at Oxford, also an Indian economist. Professor, let me start with you. There are so many different angles, different issues being discussed around this G20. What one thing would you like the 20 leaders of the world's most powerful countries to concentrate on?
Hello?
Professor, can you hear me okay?
Can you repeat what you just said?
What one thing should the G20 prioritise? It doesn't look like you can hear me, sir. We'll try and sort that out. And in the meantime, we'll just come across the screen here and speak to Tony, who's from the Economic Policy Institute in Washington. I'll ask you the same question, Tony. What should be the single most important priority?
Well, obviously, the most important issue is the crisis that every country in the world is in, the world economic crisis. And the G20 should step up to the plate and agree that all countries should engage in large-scale coordinated economic job creation stimulus. That's the way to get out of this crisis.
And let's just be clear, when you say job creation and stimulus, you simply mean governments putting an enormous amount of money into their own economies.
That's right, to create jobs, and they might as well take advantage of the situation and also use that to do good things like conversion to green economies and create things that are socially good. But the most important thing is that they engage in spending that will create jobs and pull the world out of this economic crisis.
Well, if you're watching us on BBC World, do tell us whether you would like to see your government pushing more money into your country's economy. Let's go to our guest in Oxford again. Professor, we hope you can hear us okay. Would you like to see the Indian government signing up to a major new stimulus package which sees billions more dollars being pumped into the world's economy?
Yes, I think that is the right thing to do. The G20 needs to prioritize. The first thing they have to do is to prevent the downward spiral before they get on to more longer-term issues, such as reforming financial regulation. So yes, I think that the answer to your question is that the Indian government should sign up to that.
Well, that's the view from an Indian economist. We've heard from an American economist. Let's bring our guests here in the studio into the conversation. We have Linda Yu from Oxford University, Asanda, a student from Cape Town, and Diego, a student from Brazil. Great to see all three of you. Diego, let me start with you. Your president will sit down tomorrow at the G20 summit. Would you like him to advocate another stimulus package?
Basically, we believe that investing an amount of money would be a good way out to save the economy and to stimulate demand and consumption. But basically, we also believe that this money must be, well analyzed when reallocating. Not only invested in big companies, but also in the hands of ordinary people for them to buy their things.
It's a belief that lots of people have been expressing on World Have Your Say all week. But Asanda, how would you actually go about making sure this money reaches people that Diego says deserve to benefit?
I think, as Diego was saying, the stimulus package is needed. But however, I think what we must monitor is that it is a short-term way of getting out of the crisis. For me, when it comes to expenditure, I would advocate for more expenditure in social reform, and that's taking into consideration education, that's job creation, as well as the total economy. But most definitely social infrastructure needs to be in place for us to get to that point.
And Linda, what about you? President Obama earlier tried to play down the differences between the US and the UK and Germany and France on the other side, but there do appear to be some policy differences on how large a stimulus package should be. Where do you stand on this?
I think there are differences, and it probably reflects the different circumstances of different countries. So when Germany doesn't want to spend a lot more in a discretionary way, that is more tax cuts or investment, it's because they have a lot of automatic stabilizers. Their spending rises anyways in a recession. And let's not forget, it's easier for the Americans to borrow because it's a bigger economy. The dollar is easier to sell debt in terms of. So it's easier for the Americans. But in terms of scale, I mean, they are all spending, quite a bit of GDP on different policies to get us out of this recession. But it'll be interesting to see how it is that they stabilize the financial system, because all the spending is one thing, but if the banks are still clogged up, we may not see the spending have the intended effect.
Well, all five of you do jump in and join the conversation whenever you like. And if you're watching and think you would like to speak with our five main guests, you're very welcome to. You can join us on Twitter, Facebook, email, text, however you want to get in touch. You can also use a webcam to join us live here on the World Have Your Say screen. And we can speak to Sterling Newberry. He's an economic analyst based in Boston, joining us on the World Have Your Say webcam. Sterling, what would you like to tell us?
Well, I think the G20, first of all, needs to get everybody on the same page. Right now, the US and the UK have one policy, France and Germany have another policy, and the developing world has a third set of policies. In order to get global stimulus, the developed world is going to have to offer greater control and greater access to the developing world.
Linda, just quickly before I get some comments on that from Fiona from the World Have Your Say team, China wants a bigger role in the IMF, just what Sterling was referring to. Do you buy into that idea?
I think they do, and I think it actually goes hand in hand with giving more money. So they know the IMF doesn't have enough money to help all the countries which are in trouble. So over a dozen countries have been rescued so far. They need to make the IMF richer. To do that, they need money from countries which are doing well in the recession, which is actually China. But before China puts in the money, it wants to have a bigger say. Same with Russia, Saudi Arabia, and India.
OK, well, I mentioned Twitter, Facebook, email and text messages. Fiona's from the World Have Your Say team, and she can bring us all the latest.
Tim for Change on Twitter has posted. He says, many of the protesters have come from abroad. I wonder how they got there, surely not on carbon-munching aeroplanes. Jim from the USA has posted on the World Have Your Say blog. He says, the USA should not be allowed to hold the world hostage, economically or militarily. An independent world governing body should be created. Francis in Nigeria has texted. He says, world hunger should be the top priority. And this from Peter on the World Have Your Say blog. There is still the delicate task of deciding how the IMF uses its allocation. Big power, big egos and big disagreement. And for what? Step aside, Europe. Let the emerging economies take the stage. They are more in touch and without the ego. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and you can see pictures from today and our trips around the world. To get those links, you can go onto our blog, worldhaveyoursay.com.